All right. Welcome everyone to Runners Roundtable podcast. Today we have Heather. Heather, I follow you
Hi.
on Instagram and it's I love it because my word, and I think that's when you really started to come through a lot on my feed, is once I decided that my word for the London Marathon was going to be joy. That's when I was like, oh, wait, I see her and I'm noticing her more and she's popping up in my feed more. And I chose joy because I wanted to make sure that I connected with what I loved about running, which was how happy it makes me, how strong I feel when I run. So I want to thank you for being on here and for sharing time with us and everyone who listens to this. The entire second season of Runners Roundtable is dedicated to having these conversations with female run coaches. And right now, I'm going to turn it to you. And Heather, can you tell us a little bit about yourself along with your running and coaching story?
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for having me on. It's truly an honor and a blessing to be here with you and everyone. So I was not never a runner. I did not start running until I was 30. A little bit of a history. I got on some medication, made me gain like over 35 pounds. It was awful. I felt awful. I tried like countless fad diets. I tried working out almost every day. I tried working out not that much, and nothing worked. And it just went on for years. And it just really brought me down because that was not who I was. And someone suggested I try a couch to 5K in a group setting. And I'm like, no, no, no. And they're like, come on, I want you to give it a go. And so I decided, okay, fine. I'm just going to give it a go. It's only like 8 weeks. I can just be done with it and, make that person happy. Well, come to find out, I loved it. So then it was like again, Couch to 5K program, started off with some intervals and then built your way up. But really, I was hooked. So I followed that traditional pattern of 5K and then a 10K and then a half and then did a couple halves and then I did a full. And like from there, it's just been a blessing. I mean, I'm just so joyful. Um, I surprised a lot of people in my family because they're like, I never thought you'd be the runner type, Heather. And it was nice proving them almost wrong and proving to myself too that, we can do this. Even though you may not look like that stereotypical runner, you can do great things. But I lost that weight. I built confidence in myself, confidence that I never had before. And really, it made me who I am today. Um, I would be lost without running out. I don't know where I would be. So it has been a true honor. But as I've grown in running, I had the opportunity to be a guide for a visually impaired man, which was so fun. And that opened up so many doors. Again, having someone that's not able to use their eyes and allowed me to be his eyes. So I was able to help him do his first half marathon. We did some other races together. So our first half for him was the Flying Pig here in Cincinnati. That's where I
Okay,
am.
I love that.
And then in 2019, we did his first full marathon, which was Indy Monumental. Truly a blessing. Oh my God, it was amazing. But, you know, it's things you take for granted. So when you're running, I take this for granted. I see a bump in the sidewalk. I just see that bump, pay attention, off you go. But being a guide, you need to tell them everything. So on even like a 4 mile run or a 7 mile run, I was exhausted because you're mentally stimulated because you are canvassing everything. And then from talking, good thing I like to talk because you're talking about what's going on and also just
Right.
having conversation. But being a guide opened up a lot of things for me. I ended up being a pace coach for a few different local run clubs, which was amazing because I was able to give back. But in my mind, I always wanted to do more. And I just didn't really know exactly what that was. And a few years ago, I got myself a run coach. and her name is Elizabeth. She's with Endurance for You.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to her about it, and she's like, Heather, you'd be really good. And I was like, oh, maybe. And she's like, Heather, you really need to go. And she encouraged me to step out of my comfort zone, take that leap of faith. So I'm so grateful for all her encouragement and help me get to where I am today in my coaching. Because if I had questions, she's like, hey, feel free to reach out. And that's what I love about this running community, especially in coaches. It's nice that even though technically we're like competition, but we're not,
Right.
we all have gifts and we all have areas of focus that we like to work on. And, some want to work on the people that are trying to get that BQ. Others want to help, people getting out the door. So again, that's why I love that we each have our niches, but we can help each other.
Oh, absolutely. The idea of competition is it's such a frustrating one, is probably what I'll say, because there's so many humans on this planet, right? And the people who are there to work with you, they're going to make their way to you. And that's part of why I'm so fascinated in having these conversations with different coaches, because everyone's got a different style, everyone's got a different method of communication. And even to what you said, different focus, right? It's a different
Right.
focus. And there is a coach for every runner, and there is a runner for every coach. It's just a matter of kind of sifting through it and then also getting clear with yourself, like, okay, well, what do I need out of a coach? And even for you as a coach, it's okay, what is it that I need out of the people that I'm working with, the athletes that I'm working with? So it's such a dynamic relationship. And I think anyone who listens to these episodes is going to be like, oh my God, she's talking about the coach athlete relationship again, because it's such an important one. But I'm curious, how did you get into being a guide? Because I see them at races all the time. And as you were speaking, I had goosebumps, because all I
Oh,
could think about was, this is why I love the running community so much, because I may be really biased, and you can tell me if I'm biased, it's totally fine. But I feel like runners have some of the biggest hearts. And when it comes to sharing the sport of running, I just, and I don't have any experience with any other sports. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I will speak as someone who is a runner, and hearing you speak, I was just like, the saying where it's like, oh, if you want to restore your belief in humanity, go watch a marathon.
yeah.
That, like, you gave me that feeling just listening to you talk. So how did you get into that?
So I was it was spring of 2016, and I was hoping to PR my half marathon. I was going to be running Carmel, and there was we had like a Facebook group for my run group, and they put on a post that they were looking for a guide, and I'm like, oh, I really want to do this. Someone at my church had been a guide, and just all the wonderful things, and I reached out to this person. I was like, hey, I'm definitely interested, but not right now. I was like, I'm really trying to
Mhm.
get this PR. I've been working really hard. I worked through some injuries, and like, this is my season. Um, but let me know if they would be interested next season or something like that. And I was on my way to a youth trip. We were going up to Michigan. I'm spending time in this bus, spending a lot of time with the youth. And I felt God talking to me and was like, Heather, you need to do this. And I was like, God, this race is for me. Like, this is my season.
Right.
And we're on this like long bus ride home. So I'm using my phone, and I reached out to that person. I was like, did you find a guide? She's like, unfortunately not. I'm like, I want to do it.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, it's so amazing.
So,
Again, that someone is trusting me to not run them off the sidewalk,
right.
not to run them through some bushes. Um, I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never done it before. But again, I love helping others and teaching them, because again, I had coaches, get
Right.
me to where I was, and I wanted to give back. But we met that's kind of funny, at a local cemetery because we knew there wouldn't be too much traffic.
Oh my God. I've never, okay. You're like, we met at a local cemetery. All right. The
Yeah.
story's great already.
Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful cemetery. Don't get me wrong. Nice and hilly. But again, we're trying to avoid cars because he's getting used to running because he was not a runner to begin with. I'd never been a guide. So we're running along and he can see, but it's more like watercolor by the
Yeah.
way he describes it. And he can only see out of peripheral. So the way we would run, I would run in front and he would run like 5, 6 feet behind me and kind of diagonal, like a 4 or 5 o'clock. So we're like running along. Again, I'm not really sure what I'm doing, but I know he's there. I'm telling him everything about the road. And he starts like drifting. And I'm like, oh gosh. I was like, left, 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 left. I was like, oh my gosh, you might need to wear like protective goggles or like some kind of glasses. I do not like want that weeping willow tree to get in your eyes.
Right.
um, oh, but we had so many fun conversations. Again, like we did that flying pig, and I don't know, have you done the flying pig before?
I have not. I have not.
Oh, highly recommend. Great crowd support. It's hilly,
Yep.
so it depends if you like hills or not. But obviously we practice with hills, got to get used to it. But after we ran together for a few months, he joined my run group on our long runs. That way he could get used to running with people
Right.
because that you don't want to go from just having the two of us to having thousands of people on race day. Like that would be very difficult, very stressful for everyone. But we nicknamed ourselves the Hill Masters
I
because
love that.
hills are like tough to learn. I remember, starting out or even getting back into hills after taking a break from them. Like, yeah, those are rough, but you know what? You get stronger after every run.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm a pretty like bubbly person. And we would like run past, like there would be a cop, directing traffic. I'd be like, oh, thanks, officer. And he's like, oh my gosh, we're at mile 9 and here you are still so chipper.
It
But I was like,
helps though. I do the same in races. Like that just good morning. Hello. Like that
yes.
really helps kind of break the monotony of, oh my God, how much longer are we going? How much further are we moving? So I do the same thing. And it really just, even hearing my own voice snaps me out of the thoughts that are in my brain.
Yeah, I think it's like that mental side of things. Like you
Yeah,
got to, because you do get in your head, like, oh my gosh, I'm only at mile 2. But it's like being grateful for the opportunity to be out there, being
absolutely.
grateful that I'm out there to help guide.
Yeah.
Grateful
So
for the people that are out there cheering. You know what I mean? Like it's just that mindset.
absolutely. Absolutely. And now it's like we're kind of veering here because I'm just so curious. You are the first person that I speak to that has had this experience. So I'm assuming you did training runs together. It's not like you just show up on race day and you're like, all right, let's get this done. You actually do training runs. And it seems like, and I don't, again, like educate me, educate us all. Um, is that usual or is that common practice where you'll train together, but then maybe you do run clubs together where you learn to run around a lot of people? Because that is something that I know for me personally, it always messes with me. It doesn't matter how many races I've done. When I go to races, it's particularly big events. There's this moment of probably just a lot of overwhelmed feelings being surrounded by so many people. And obviously, the pandemic has kind of, for some of us, it's heightened that feeling. But is that something that normally happens throughout that particular relationship where you two train together prior to the race and then work on running with other people as well? Or is that something that in your relationship you were intentional about doing?
I really didn't have anything to go by. So
Okay.
in my mind, I felt like this was the right progression. So I think this
Yeah.
is almost like the early start of my coaching working
Yeah,
before I started
absolutely.
it. Because like, okay, we need to get used to running with each other first. And
Yeah.
then that's phase 1 because I need to make sure I learn how to be a guide. He tells me maybe things I might need to do different. He get used to the way I talk or that I coach him. And then the
Right.
next progression was, let's go to a run group setting. So instead of just being 2 of us, now there might be 50 of us, then subdivided into different pace groups. But
Right.
then he got used to being around them. And then you had the race, which was
Okay.
definitely hard. I wasn't able to talk like for days after, because when you're around thousands of people, you got to talk really loud, and you
Yeah,
want to
it's
make sure they don't step in a pothole or start drifting or anything like that. There's just a lot to think about. And you don't think about like sidewalks or roads where they slant. So you got to like explain that, because you don't want to fall, or you don't want him to fall. You know what I mean? There's just like so many things, again, that I know I take for granted on every single run or every single day by
oh,
having my vision.
yeah, I was gonna say absolutely. I'm just thinking about my run this morning, and I'm like, oh, I can now if I think back and focus in on it. Oh yeah, I know there are certain parts that I just ran around because I could see that the road right there wasn't great, and it's I just thank you so much for having that experience and then sharing it with us, because that is definitely something that I've always been curious about, where I'm like, wait, do they actually train together? How, which again, that makes a lot of sense. And even just taking it, that adding that step of, okay, let's go do the run club, and also the additional step of making sure, I'm sure that was part of it too, right, of like being comfortable, making sure that you're communicating like, oh, all these people are around us as well, like people on a race, especially something like Flying Pig, which I know is a very big and popular event. I mean, you've got thousands and thousands of runners out there. So you're not only worried about course conditions, you're also worried about the people around you.
Exactly. Yeah, there was just a lot of things to consider, especially, right when you start off. Once you get to mile 3, 4, things definitely start spreading out. You have a little bit more space. But yeah, in that beginning in your corrals, it was stressful. But again, I was up for the challenge. I knew we had things figured out. But I spent a lot of time like turning my head to the back right, just making sure
Right.
that we were
He's
all
there.
together. And
Absolutely. So you've got this beautiful experience. Like I said, of all the people that I know of people who have done this, but of all the runners that I know, I have yet to actually meet someone who has
no,
done that. So this to me is such a treat, because I've always been so curious about that. And as I said, I was just like, this is why the running community is so awesome. Like we do things like this. And I love that that's also an experience, even hearing from what you said, where it did plant the seeds for coaching. So tell us a little bit about your coaching philosophy and what goes in, or maybe let's actually go back, or maybe it's all connected, right? What's your coaching philosophy? And then how does that relate to joyful purpose? Where does that kind of, again, joy is such a big part of who you are and your messaging. How did that all come together? Because I'm, again, going to assume that when you became a run coach, you weren't like, yes, joy. It might have been there, but I'm sure your evolution included you getting a little bit more clarity, you a little more comfort in yourself and in your message. So walk us through all of that if you can.
yeah, so kind of like I would say, like my mission statement is like, I want to bring joy and purpose to my athletes' running journey. Joyce holds a special place in my heart, because it's my middle name. But
Okay.
um, no, I just think being joyful does so much for us physically and mentally and spiritually. I always knew joy was going to be part of it somehow. I just did not know exactly. But what I tell my athletes, and when people ask about my name of my run company, is I want things to be joyful. And I know things are going to happen, absolutely, when you don't want to go out and do those hill repeats. You don't feel joyful out there running that tempo run in the rain. But knowing there's a purpose behind what you're doing makes all the difference. So, as I kind of mentioned, I love details. I love writing schedules. I love doing things. So I give this great purpose behind every workout. So again, if it's not providing that joy, look at that purpose in the bigger picture, it's helping create those goals that you're going after. And I love using my talents to help people grow and absolutely like believe in their self.
How did you make that connection between joy, purpose, and running? Because that is, I always say, I'm like, I love running. And even this morning, my run, I called it a 90-110 run. 90% didn't want to do it, 110% glad that I did. So, how do you make that connection? Because I find that when people talk to me about running or they tell me they want to get into running, they can't get past, or not that they can't get past, but there is definitely a challenge there in getting past the fact that running is hard. And I always try to tell people, I'm like, it is hard. It's always going to be hard. What kind of changes is that mental side of things where it's still hard, but maybe the effort doesn't feel hard, right? Like how you're viewing it. So, how is it that you made that connection between joy, purpose, and running?
I don't know. I felt like, yes, in the very beginning when I did that Couch to 5K program, like, yeah, it was hard, but it brought me so much joy. Again, if I look like hindsight, it made me who I am. I've always been a happy, joyful person, but it has brought so many other opportunities. But what I want to tell people who are new to running or maybe coming back to running that are like frustrated with how things were, it doesn't need to be that hard though either. Maybe, as we said, it's the mindset, but maybe we need to go at things a different way. For example, with my coaching style, I want their schedules to work with their life and also to work with their goals. So it's kind of, you got to marry those together, because if you have a goal of a certain time or a certain distance, as coaches, we know we got to do the following things, but the following things might not work out with the lifestyle they have. They have children, they work long hours, have multiple jobs, take care of family members. The list goes on. You've got to be able to find something that can work that out together. And when you can do that, I think that helps that person feel like they could check off those boxes.
Right.
Because instead of it looking at, oh my gosh, look at all these things I got to do, I can do that today. I can do that 30-minute run. I got that. And, getting that confidence built up in themselves will help them be able to do bigger things in the future. So I think you can start off and be happy and make things easier and then build up more.
Yeah, I almost think that I try, I think of myself when I started running, and I very similarly, it was a Couch to 5K program, and I just found something online. And, people who know me, people who have followed me on Instagram or have listened to any of these podcasts, they kind of know the story where it was, I started running when my kids were very young. And it was the thing that I did because I could stick them in a stroller and do it with them. So it was one of those things I wanted them to see that I was active and healthy without the baggage of having to look a certain way or expectation, right? Like we're just going to go outside and we're going to sweat. That's just it. And I almost feel like when I look back, I have so much fondness for, baby runner Steph, because she had no clue and she didn't know any better. It was just, there was more of this just awe that I could do it to begin with. And I find that at least now, the longer I'm running, I'm constantly seeking out, okay, how can I reconnect to that awe? Not so much the expectation of what I should be doing or where I think I should be doing, and I think that speaks to a greater issue of like maybe social media and just how much information is actually out there. But I just remembered that of like just being so amazed And I hear that in your voice too, like just being so amazed that you could do it. Like it was hard, but I was like, oh, I did that. Like I would finish these runs, and I started off with run walk method. And
Mhm.
I remember doing that, it was like your first run was 10 minutes long, right? Like working up to that and then just feeling so proud of myself, proud that I even tried it. And that's what I get from you. That's kind of the feeling I get from you, where it's okay, we connect to this joy, we reconnect to this purpose through that awe of what you can do. And it's also, you're not denying that it's hard. You're like that tempo run in the rain. When you were saying that, I'm like, oh, hills. I'm like, oh, that hurts me too. And I'm in Miami, Florida, where it is flat. Like it's flat, 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 flat. So you said flying pigs and hills, and I'm like, okay, so maybe that race is not a bucket list race because there's a lot of hills. But even the way you speak about it, you speak about running as if it's more than the physical act of running.
Absolutely. I definitely think I always thought in the beginning, when I did my first marathon, it was going to all be physical. And you know what? Like that was not true. Like the mental and spiritual journey was top notch. It was like, it just gives me goosebumps thinking about it. Cause I, again, never thought that Heather from a tiny little town in southeastern Ohio would be running in general, and let alone running a marathon. I had the opportunity to run some big races, and I was just truly blessed to have that opportunity to do that. But I think you got to have that confidence in yourself, and you learn a lot about yourself when you're out there on the road for 15
Oof.
miles, 17 miles, 20 miles. And I am like just like a middle of the pack runner, middle to back of the pack runner. Like I'm enjoying the steps, and I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be out there and checking things off and just giving it my all. And I always try to give that glory to God when I cross that finish line and just be like, thank you, Lord. Like I hit a lot of bumps in the road, but look, we made that happen. Um, but I just love helping my athletes find that courage and believe in themselves, because that makes such a big difference.
It really does. And again, anyone who listens to this is going to be like, oh, here she goes again, because I say it too, whether you've spoken to me in person. And again, and I'm sure it's the same for you, where you get a lot of people who are asking you questions about running and they're just really curious. They see it, they want to do it, but maybe they don't think it's for them because, again, like this idea of it being hard, and it is hard. I want everyone to know that running is hard. It's hard, but that's why you have coaches. That's why you have community to kind of help you learn how to manage those hard moments. And it is true that when you're running or when you're out there, you really do learn a lot about yourself. And to me, running is more mental than it is physical.
Exactly.
And it's like before any of my races, particularly the longer distance ones, the half marathon, full marathon, I always say it, I'm like, I have no doubt that I'm going to get from start line to finish line. What worries me is what's going to happen between my head during that time, because the mental really, really does play such a big role. How do you help your athletes learn how to cope or learn how to adapt with the mental challenges of running or of distance running? Because I feel like that's part of it. Like that's part of the process. Part of the process is you're going to have to figure out how to become your biggest cheerleader and how to silence your own biggest inner critic. So how do you work with your athletes with that?
So this kind of goes along with that, and along with the joy purpose I wanted to, I forgot to add earlier. So part of like my weekly schedules that I provide, I do what's called a joy challenge. And so it can be a variety of different things, but usually it might be like some kind of quote, and then I give a challenge that goes along with that. So here's an example of one I had recently for them. You were born to be real. not perfect.
Mm.
So their challenge was I asked them to read that quote again and let it sink in. And I told them maybe they need to read it again. Maybe write it down on a post-it note and put it on their bathroom mirror. Because I think we all like think we need to be perfect. We need to hit that tempo exactly right. We need to be like so and so on social media and do exactly what they're doing. Um, but we're not meant to do that. So then I said, we're not here to be perfect, but be the person we're called to be. Sometimes we know our purposes, and sometimes we need to discover it. Keep being you. There's no one else like you, and that's truly amazing. And then I said, during the busy holiday season, remind yourself that you are enough and you are loved. So
Mm.
these are just little examples of things I give because, again, we're working on that mental aspect of things. I have them work on mantras. I personally tried to find like one mantra and focus on it. I know you mentioned you had joy for your race. I usually like vary my mantra per race I'm on. I might
Yep.
get like a shirt and put it on there with it. Maybe get a bracelet made with that mantra. But I just have them really dig deep. I have like worksheets that I give them when a race is coming up. That way they can try to plan, you know, maybe if something is going wrong, what can we do? We talk through things, look at race strategies. Again, if we see a hiccup, let's try plan A, plan B, plan C. I was like, we got a lot of different things we can do. You know, that alphabet's pretty long.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's part of it too. And it goes, and it really does connect to this idea that you're sharing to us about perfection, right? Where perfection is very rigid. And running requires so much flexibility because one, no two runs are the same, right? I'm sure you've seen that. I have felt it and experienced it in my body where it can be the same workout and they feel totally different. So that idea of perfection is very limiting. And how do you talk to people about that, right? It's like that's always something that I'm asking, especially when I see that I'm getting too hard on myself or where I'm experiencing a lot of disappointment where it's like, but wait, this is for me. Like this isn't for anyone else. How is it that you work through challenges that your athletes may have?
I definitely think we got to talk about it. Like,
Yeah.
let's really get to the root cause. You know, a lot of times once you get down to that root cause, it's really not that big of a problem, but we've made it so big and it requires so much of our focus that we can't see the reasonable things. You know, let's step back. Let's, you know, maybe cut back our mileage. Let's make it all easy runs just for a little bit. Let's get us feeling happy again, feeling joyful about running.
Right.
And then we'll start sprinkling in some more quality work.
Yeah. How do people go about working with you? So I'm a runner, regardless of whether I'm a new runner, seasoned runner. I really love calling things seasoned instead of like experienced or old or advanced. I'm like, I'm a seasoned runner. I've been here for a minute here. So I'm looking for a coach. What does that process look like for you? Is it, you know, do I reach out to you? Do I email you? Is there a consultation call? What's the process like for beginning that relationship with you as a coach?
Yeah, so I get athletes messaging me on my Instagram page, and that's at Joyful Purpose Running. Sometimes they'll reach out to me on my personal page, which is Heather Runs for Coffee. But I have a link on my coaching page, and it's like a little questionnaire.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of lets me like get all their information, what they're looking for, and then I set up a phone call. And as we kind of spoke about earlier, I want to make sure that the athlete wants to work with me and I would be a good fit for them, but I need to be a good fit for them as well. It's like a two-way
Yep.
phone call interview. And I suggest to athletes, if you please talk to multiple people, I want the best for them. Of course, I would love to work with them if I feel like it's the right fit, but I want them to be happy. And if someone else can do that for them, then I am 100% on board with that.
What are some of the things that you look for when you're having these conversations? Like, what are the clues or the qualities that indicate this is a good fit?
I love being able to help people. So if they're looking for that accountability, if they're looking for encouragement, they're looking for support, if they're looking at maybe trying a new distance, if they're looking for something exciting and fun, they want to train smarter, looking for someone to care, that wants to have that relationship, that if they have a question or a problem about a workout, reach out to me. I want to be that person that's there to help you. Um, for me personally, I just don't want to be that coach that's like, you can only message me one Thursday a month. That's all you get. I really want to be there anytime, because you never know when things are going to pop up or when you are concerned about something. And I really want to be there. I really love race strategy, trying to look into like ways that we can try to work on things. But I think it's like one of the best investments you can do for yourself. I know it's changed my running life. I know we talk about this all the time. Like, learning to run easy pace was like the hardest thing of my life. Because I spent so much time, and I was under the impression like if I wanted to run a 10-minute goal pace for a half marathon, I had to run 10 minutes all the time and still do some speed work. And that's not the case, as we now know. But I love helping my runners, but I also do run walk as well. So I personally have had great success in run walk in the marathon, and took a significant amount of time, like 14 minutes off a prior PR by switching to run walk. So I don't follow 100% Jeff Galloway planning. I kind of take all these different plans and I kind of give them my own, but I've had several athletes do that. So I like to be open with people and give them options. It doesn't say they have to follow that option, but it's just an idea. And for my athletes that were doing like marathon training that wanted to do run walk, I would have them do all runs during the week, and their long runs would be run walk. And I had athletes getting PRs, and they were not sore. They were feeling great. They could have ran another marathon the next week and they were feeling so good. So I like to tell my athletes, when you're in a racing situation, like, and it's time for your walk and you signal walking, don't get out of the way. Like, you deserve to be there as much as that other person that's running. And you're going to be there playing cat and mouse that time. So don't feel inferior. Like, you are amazing. You deserve that spot on the road, and you don't need to be running 29 miles because you're weaving off to the side. No, stick your ground. You are enough.
Yeah. And I love that. That was, again, I started with run walk. I was part of a Galloway group here in Miami. So for the longest time, I did run walk, and that was just what felt good for me. And it's shifted over the years. And now, sometimes I walk. I really try to connect more to just the effort of how I'm feeling. But I remember the first few races that I did as a run walker, how, I won't say discouraging, but how annoying it was when I was taking my walk break. Because yes, I feel like there is this unspoken rule that when you take your walk break, you have to move to the side, right? Like, I feel like there's like this rule. And I remember in those early years at these races, I would take my walk break. I would try to go to the side. But you know what? When I go to the side, it puts me closer to spectators. And the spectators would all say, come on, you can run. You got this. And I don't know how many times I would tell them, I'm walking on purpose. Like this, there's a reason for this. And so many races where it was that cat and mouse situation of kind of going back and forth. So I love that you brought up run walk, because to me, it just shows, one, you're flexible with how you achieve the goal, right? You don't just have to run. I even love that hybrid of run during the week, but do run walk on the weekends. Because I'm thinking about that. I'm like, oh yeah, then that's a great way to stay recovered, or to at least boost that recovery process so that you can get back into the runs during the week when you're taking that long run and giving yourself those breaks. But it made me laugh because thinking about you, I'm like, oh, I wish I had someone back in those days to tell me, no, don't move to the side. You're here, right? Like if I'm lifting my hand, that should be enough notice that you know that I'm going to stop. It shouldn't be a lift of the hand and then let me walk off to the side
Right.
to like clear the road. That's so incredibly empowering for the athletes that you work with that receive that message from you, because that is something that they're going to take into race day.
And something else I want to say in regards to run walk doesn't mean that you have to run an easy pace and then walk. I have trained my athletes like you're going to be running fast and then you're going to have your little walk break. I had an athlete take 17 minutes off their PR for a marathon this past season, and I personally did a quarter marathon, which I'd never done a quarter marathon before, but I got a compliment from this guy in the final half mile. I was booking it. It was crazy. I didn't know I could do it that day, but I was running some fast paces and then just walking. At that point, it was like 30 to 45 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, you are keeping me on my toes. And we've been together this whole time. And he's like, I can't believe you're doing run walk. And I was like, yep, I just want to tell people like run walk, you can do amazing things. Like I just feel like I need to be an advocate for that. And that run walk does not need to mean you're slow. You can get significant PRs. You can get a BQ off a run walk. So again, I want to step out and encourage people. Don't, diss it. Like it's awesome. Try it. You will surprise yourself and you're not going to be sore. You're going to recover so quickly and you're going to keep running forever. At least for me, I want to keep enjoying running for many years to come. I don't want to be sidelined because I was doing things not the right way. But again, everyone has what they like, and that's the amazing part about running. But I would encourage others to try it.
I was going to say, and there's also seasons to it, right? So it's there. And I think that's always something that's important for people to remember too, that you can go from run, walk to run, like straight running. I don't even know, like you can kind of go back and forth. What I'm hearing you say is that, hey, this is just another tool in your runner toolkit that can help you find that joy on the run, find enjoyment for the run, and also longevity in the sport. I think it's all so connected. And I love that you brought that up. I have such fondness for the run walk method. And there was something that I had listened to a few months ago, and they were talking about how that particular method, it's not like you're not shifting gears as much as you think you are. It's not like you're running and then you stop to like a leisurely pace. You're actually still kind of speed walking. You're still moving at a nice pace. You're just not moving as fast as running. And that's what they talked about, how it's like you want those transitions to be seamless. So to get them seamless, they're really not that far apart than what you think they are.
And I tell my athletes, it's walk with a purpose.
Yes, there you go.
Yep, that's the kind of like the little line I use for them. No sprinting, no crazy speed walking, but walk with a purpose. And that's what I use with Jeff too. I'd be like, Jeff, like we were on our marathon and I can tell we're slowing down. I was like, we're losing our purpose. I'm trying to walk with a purpose. But yeah, just keep those purposes, keep those thoughts in your mind. But those will help keep you moving though too.
Yeah. So purpose is something that's so important for you. How do you help athletes connect to their purpose? Because every athlete is going to have a different purpose. And this was something I've talked about with other runners, other coaches as well, where it's like the coach athlete relationship, such an important part of it is that honesty, right? Is the athlete being honest with you as a coach. But I always come back to, at least for me, when it's whoever I work with, I always start off with why. It's like, why do you want this? Because if we can connect to that why, it's going to be easier for you to manage the challenging times, the hard times, because you know it's something greater than this one bad run or this one bad moment. So how do you help your athletes connect to their own individual purpose in that process? Because again, my purpose as a marathoner might be very different than another person's purpose at a 5K. And yet they're still equally valid.
Oh, for sure. I agree. Like asking that why is huge. But also like if it was a struggling workout, a hard week, I'm like, good. Hey, that's like a mentally tough run. Check. You're building that up in the background. So, because you never know what race day is going to bring. It might bring a rainy, crummy day. But you know what? You've done lots of crummy, rainy runs. So it's not going to bother you on race day. Or if it's really, really hot. Like for me personally, I do not like hot weather. I would rather run in negative temperatures if I had the option over something hot. I would rather have 20 layers on instead of like struggling in my tank top.
Yeah. Okay. We've got to switch. We've got to switch just for a moment because I mean, here it's we've had cooler days here in Miami, but I feel like there's just so much hot weather that I definitely, I always say, I'm like, the sun wins every time. Doesn't sun and humidity, they're always going to win. But again, it's that connecting to that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And how do athletes respond when you ask them that? Like, why are you doing this? Why do you want this goal?
I think a lot of times they're very open to it, or maybe they haven't really sat there and thought about that. Like, well, I think it's this. And then, you maybe like prompted a little bit more, and then you kind of see it evolving. And, yeah, we might have this goal of, oh, I want to hit a particular time. But as you're working towards that, or you're seeing what your current fitness is, that's where it gets hard when you're like, maybe I'm not quite there right now. I'm not where I was 3 years ago. And those are hard conversations to have, but saying, hey, look where you are right now. You're doing great things. Not saying you're not going to get there. Let's work towards it.
Yeah.
Trying to coming back to that positive. Yes, maybe not right now, but that does not mean not ever either.
So, and I think this is very much so, it underpins a lot of what you're talking about, where it's connecting them back to the moment, right?
Correct.
For me, it's very much joy is something you experience in the moment. Remembering your purpose is what grounds you. So that not right now, I love that because I was telling someone earlier today where I'm like, I love this idea of not right now, right? Because not right now is we're not closing the door on anything. The door is still open. It's just that not right now. But I love how you said where not right now does not mean not ever. But it does create an opportunity to have a conversation.
And there's like, as a coach, you don't want to break anyone's heart. Like, we don't want to do that. But as a coach, you do need to be honest. That's why they ask you to be their coach, because they want you to guide them. But I also think as a coach, you need to listen to your athletes very much and kind of have that nice marriage of a coach athlete relationship, because you do need to listen to each other and then, make that path forward.
Oh, yeah. The importance of communication, of listening to one another, because the athlete as well has to be open to what you're saying, has to be open to your vision, because I mean, I'm one of those athletes as well, where it's for as much as I know about running and I talk to people about running and I help people with running, when it comes to my personal running, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about it. I want to trust that someone else has a more global view of it so that I can focus on today's run, so that I can focus on what do I need to do today to be the strongest version of myself. And that's just such an important part of the coaching relationship that I feel like, I don't know if people miss it or it's just they don't really, we don't stop to think about it, right? I feel like a lot of people may start to get, they may say, oh, I want to get a coach because I want to meet these time goals. But the coaching relationship isn't that simple. Like if you want to meet your time goal, there's plenty of plans online that you can find. But if you really want to grow, and this is what I'm hearing from you, it's like, no, if you really want to grow like to a deep cellular spiritual level, that's what a coach is going to offer you. A coach is going to offer you a deeper connection to yourself by being able to see you in a light that maybe you don't see yourself in.
Exactly. Like one thing I do with like my schedules, and I'm not sure how you are with your athletes, like if they're in base training, off-season training, I'll like send them out a few weeks at a time. But once they're in their race training cycle, I only send them out 1 week at a time.
Yep.
Because I have found that if you were looking at maybe 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, they start stressing like about a particular quality workout, the mileage I have set up. And again, we need to live in the moment. Don't worry about days out. Like worry about this week. I really wouldn't do it to them and only give them to them 1 day at a time. That's not fair. But
Right.
just worry, focus on today. Don't worry about that tempo run that I had slated for 4 weeks out. Like just go enjoy your 45-minute run today
Yeah. And it goes
and
back
have
to,
fun.
I was saying that goes back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of the importance of flexibility because life happens. Even for you as a coach, you can plan out a perfect training plan, but then someone gets sick or something happens or there is an unexpected change in the schedule, right? So all of a sudden, this perfect plan of yours didn't work, but you as a coach and the athlete as well, you can work with that 1 week chunk and then build from that 1 week chunk. And again, it goes back to that like, okay, how do we keep you present? But also, what can I do as a coach to prevent you from overthinking and potentially freaking out about something? Because, like I see it for myself again as an athlete, I see it for myself looking at training plans where it's the workout that you're writing for an athlete at week 1 of half marathon training, it's not going to be the same as week 12, right? Like there is fitness that's going to be gained. And yet, if you see that, that can be really intimidating. And when
Oh,
we're
yeah.
talking about the importance of mental and getting your brain in the game, it is through living in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And trusting the journey.
Mm.
And like one of my little favorite quotes is find joy in the journey. And if you look at the word journey, the word joy is in it. So I always like tell my athletes that find joy in the journey. And no matter what's going on, no matter how hard life is, there's always something joyful. And sometimes you just gotta like sit there and really think about it, but there is always something back there for you that's shining bright at you.
Oh yeah. Sometimes you kind of have to sit in it. Well, because it's our feelings are so powerful, right? Like our feelings are really it's gonna direct our gaze unless we put a pause and say, okay, can we take these blinders off for a minute and see what is possible? What is there? And I love that because I wrote it down journey and I'm like, hey, you've got joy in the beginning and at the end, right? Like it is like when you're talking about trusting the journey and finding joy in the journey, it's like, yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
is there. It's there all along. There might be all this muckiness in between, but it is there. That's so beautiful. All right, I have one final question for you. Well, I'm going to have two questions for you, but this is the last big question. And it's the question that I like to end each of these episodes with. And it's how can we make running more accessible? And what are your thoughts on that?
You kind of spoke about it already, and maybe I took this in a different way than what you're looking at for an answer for. But I said we need to remind ourselves that we are worthy, that we are enough, that we can do hard things and that we can do whatever we set ourselves up to do. I think it's just really like believing on ourselves, no matter where you are in the journey. If you are not even active, if you just want to get off your couch, you can do it. Walking, and then you're going to build upon that and maybe do a little bit of running. But I like referenced also about the run walk, about like holding your ground and knowing that you deserve to be on that road, in the middle of the road. I challenge you, if you're doing a run walk, stay in the middle. Don't get off to the side, and just put that arm up to let them know you're walking, and just stick your ground and smile and enjoy that game of cat and mouse. That I know you're going to do great things, and be the best you is another thing I always think about too, because no one else is like you.
Yeah, I love that. And when I ask that question, there is no answer. I'm not looking for anything in particular. I'm looking for what you think. And because it's so, hearing your answer, and what I thought was like, yeah, it starts with the thought. Like, it starts with that desire to try. But that desire to try is very much so linked to what you said. Like, that idea of worthiness, that idea of like, you are enough just the way you are. Go take up all the road. Like, and I think of that too, like even just on a regular training run. And I don't know how runs are in your area, but here, Saturdays is the big running day. And there are like, there's so many people that are out, and you're kind of like, like it's like at least for myself, there are sometimes when I'm running, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of people. How do I make myself smaller? Like, how do I, and I'm hearing you, and it's like, no, 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 no. You don't make yourself smaller. You actually make yourself bigger, because there's a lot of joy in knowing
Yeah.
that you are worthy, that you are enough, and that you can take up as much space as anyone else around you. So yeah, that question is totally open-ended up into your interpretation.
But I also want to like put it to I'm not wanting people to say, or I'm saying that I'm better than anyone else, but just knowing that you deserve to be there as much as anyone else. Just don't put yourself down.
Yeah. And it's, and it's funny because I feel like this thinking that they're better or that someone else is better, it's so connected to what we think a runner is, right? And to what you said, I love that you said it in the beginning, because you're like, wait, I didn't start running until I'm older, and a lot of people, and I'm like, I'm starting to realize that that's the story for way more runners than we think. I feel like the majority of people who run are people who found running later in life. They're not people who have been running since infancy. It is literally, for some reason or another, in their 20s, in their 30s, they decided, I'm going to give this thing a shot. So I also want to throw that out there, because I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I was close to 30 when I started running too, and had never been a runner, had never been an athlete. And over the years, I started to believe in myself as one.
Good.
So I love all of that. Final question. This is truly the final question. Please share with us where we can find you and anything else that you have going on, or any final thoughts.
So I am on Instagram at Heather Runs for Coffee. That's my personal page. Just to kind of let you know, I've been having some health issues. So my like running journey has just been kind of on hold, but I have been able to focus on my athletes and just trying to give them some sunshine. But I've been really honest with what's been going on. So if you are a woman going through some hard times with menopause or anything like that, reach out. That I just really want to get that out there, because I feel like we're not talking about things, and I just want to kind of turn that around and get help out there for other runners going through hard times. But my run coaching page is at Joyful Purpose Running, and trying to share that sunshine and ways that you can find that joy and purpose in your running.
I love that. Heather, it was so great talking to you. Thank you so much for being on Runners Roundtable podcast. To everyone that's listening, give her a follow. and we'll see you soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
Stephanie.